This happened at a time in my life when my marriage was unraveling. And with the death of my dog, the message to me was loud and clear. It's time to let go of the leash. Because I had always kept her on a leash from that first experience. And she took me around on the leash all those years on those walks. And now she was no longer there. And I had let go of the leash, like literally. But now it was time for me to let go of the leash, the way that I had leashed myself in my life, in my marriage. It was time for me to let go. And so I did.
Today we have a very special guest. Dr. Judith Rich is an octogenarian and a pioneering teacher in the field of transformation and consciousness. She is an accomplished transformational and leadership development trainer with 50 years experience in training facilitation, personal and executive coaching, and public speaking. Dr. Rich is the author of the international best-selling book, Beyond the Box, Lean Out, Break Free, Rise Up, which provides the tools to support one reinventing oneself, building courage, and creating a brave new life beyond what is already known, safe, and comfortable. She is also the host of the podcast, The New Beyond, which she launched on her 80th birthday. Welcome, Judith, to the show. I am so excited to have you here today as the first guest on my show, my new show, Life is Now. I'm so excited. So how are you, Judith?
Oh, I'm great. And I'm excited, Suzanne, to be your first guest. Excited and honored. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, the reason why I chose you as my first guest, well, you don't know, so I'm going to share with you, is because you are truly someone that I look up to, I deeply respect. And for those of you that don't know, full disclosure, Judith has actually coached me personally, and she has called me out on my BS. She has held me accountable, which is why she's a good coach. And I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Judith, but I have a very deep connection with you also because you remind me a lot of my mom. Because
You did mention that to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why is because you've created such an amazing life of your own, and you've done so many things, and you've done so many things later in life, and you've never let anything stop you, and that reminds me so much of my mom, and so I really do feel a deep connection towards you. And for those that don't know, she also launched her own podcast at 80. So that's amazing.
That's
And we're going to hear more about that and other things. But you have an amazing story about a traumatic experience that happened in your life that sent you on a journey that completely changed your life and the trajectory of your life. So I would love to hear it. And so would my audience.
okay. Well, I just want to just a little advance notice to your audience. In thinking about sharing this story on your podcast today and sharing it publicly, I've never really shared this story publicly before. And so as I thought about how I would share the story, a lot of emotions came up for me. It was a very emotional experience, an emotional time in my life. And as I was kind of refreshing my memory about the events and how they unfolded, a lot of emotions came up for me. So don't be surprised if I get very emotional as I tell this story today.
Well, we're keeping it real, so it's fine, whatever happens while you're telling the story.
Okay. So this is a story that had its beginning in 1986 and it ends in 1989. So let me go back to 1986. My husband and I had four dogs. We lived in a kind of rural area in Orange County, California. with an acre of land. And these 4 dogs were just free to run and play and roam. And nobody ever, we didn't even own leashes. And so, but my husband had his business in Newport Beach, and it was a long, arduous commute from where we lived to Newport, a lot of traffic on the freeway. So we made the decision to sell that house and move to the beach closer to his office. And we bought a house that had no yard at all. Now, the only thing that made it sustainable for us with all these dogs was that this house was across the street from 10,000 acres of undeveloped land owned by the Irvine Company. Now, that land has now been turned into 3 golf courses, developed into mega mansions and shopping centers. But at the time that we lived there, it was absolutely raw, undeveloped land. So it was sustainable for us to be there with the dogs. So the very first time I went out with the dogs to take them, for a walk in this open space. So one of the 4 dogs was a Saint Bernard. Her name was Madam, and this is really a story about Madam. So I kept Madam on the leash, walking across the street to get to this open space. The other dogs just ran across. And when we got to the open space, this was our first time out there, I let her off the leash, thinking that, just like the other dogs, she would kind of stay near me and we would walk together and we would explore and have a wonderful adventure. That's not what happened. She took off running and disappeared. She took off running. Now, this was a 135-pound dog. She took off running as fast as she could go. And she ran until she was out of sight. And so now this is very hilly terrain. So I could only see so far. So I start running in the direction that she ran away to, calling her name and calling, and the other dogs are kind of staying with me. Nowhere. She's nowhere. I'm searching and calling and searching and calling. And after about 20 minutes or so, I was up on a high part and I could see down in a little valley. There were some trees and some growth, some green area. So I thought, oh, maybe she's down there. So I went down in there, and sure enough, there she was. There was a little area of water down there, and she was belly down in the water, panting and drinking, and she had run herself ragged. So I knew from that, so I put her back on the leash, and I knew from that point that I was never going to be able to take her out there in that land off the leash, which was really so sad, because here's 10,000 acres of space for this dog to run in, and I couldn't trust her. There were rattlesnakes, there were coyotes, there were all kinds of creatures out there. Plus, the Irvine Company grazed their cattle. There were bulls out there. It was not exactly a safe place, even for me. But I have this adventurous spirit, so I wanted to go anyway. Okay, that was 1986. So for the next 3 years, I go out there every day. She's on the leash. Now, she weighed more than I did, so she's actually walking me, and we have all these amazing adventures. Okay, so one day we're home. Now it's 1989. One day we're home. Dogs are in the backyard. My telephone rings. It's a neighbor. The neighbor is telling me, I just want you to know your dog got out of the yard. This is the Saint Bernard. Your dog got out of the yard, got into my yard, and nearly killed my dog. Come and get your dog. Well, she was wearing tags, and so our phone number was on it. So the neighbor knew where to call. So I rush across the street. I get my dog, and their dog was a Great Dane, also a very big dog, and her chest was ripped wide open. There was a big gash. Her chest flap was just wide open. I was absolutely mortified. And the neighbor told me, "You're lucky. We have a 3-year-old granddaughter. If she had been here and been out in the back, it could have been fatal." So, oh my God, this was devastating. So, we said, "Take your dog to the vet. We'll pay all the bills. We'll take care of your dog, of course." So they did. Meanwhile, we go to our vet and tell our vet what happened. And our vet said, "You must euthanize your dog.
Oh my
Your
God.
dog is a danger. If your dog had killed this child, this dog is a lawsuit waiting to happen. You must put this dog down." Well, this was devastating. Meanwhile, I went to visit the other dog in the vet to make sure she was okay. And she just had this humongous surgical, repair done. And she was fine. She made it fine. However, we made the decision that we had to trust our vet. And so we had really no choice at that point but to euthanize our dog. So it took 2 weeks for me to just integrate that information. And during those 2 weeks, I think my dog Madam knew something was happening, because she never would go on the walk after that with me. Every day I'd take the other dogs out to the open space. Madam would not come with us. I think she knew what was about to happen. So the day came for the vet to euthanize her. He came to the house. And that day, before the vet came, I bathed her, I brushed her, I prepared her, and I put a big white sheet out on the front lawn. And when the vet came, she was very docile, which was not like her. She was very docile. She laid down on the sheet. I think she knew exactly what was about to happen. She laid down on the sheet, and I said a prayer, and I gave her my final messages and hugs and love and all of that. And the vet put the needle in her paw, and she was gone in seconds. And I asked the vet if he would help me carry her. Actually, he carried her over to a small flower bed where the earth was really soft. And we pressed her paw into the earth and made an impression. And the next day I took some plaster of Paris and I poured it into that impression and made a mold of her paw. Well, her paw was as big as my hand. So now here's the last part of the story. We have a tradition in my family when a loved one, a person, or a beloved pet leaves the earth, we give them an assignment from the other side. We ask them to be in charge of something from the other side. So when Madam, after she was gone, I said to her, "Madam, will you be in charge of sunsets?" And that night, so our house had a view of the ocean. So we looked west and we saw the sunset every night. And that night was the most spectacular sunset I had ever seen in my life. And I knew it was Madam letting me know she'd arrived safely. And every time I ever see a glorious sunset, this is now 35 years later, every time I see a beautiful sunset, I say hi to Madam, and I know she's saying hi to me. And I teach other people when they lose their pets, because, losing a pet is such a traumatic experience for people. And I teach them, give your pet an assignment from the other side. So you'll always be connected to them. So I guess there's one small addendum. This happened at a time, well, it's not a small, it's actually the main point of the story. This happened at a time in my life when my marriage was unraveling. And with the death of my dog, the message to me was loud and clear. It's time to let go of the leash. Because I had always kept her on a leash from that first experience. And she took me around on the leash all those years on those walks. And now she was no longer there. And I had let go of the leash, like literally. But now it was time for me to let go of the leash, the way that I had leashed myself in my life, in my marriage. It was time for me to let go. And so I did. And we got divorced and I moved on and started a whole new chapter of my life. This is the life-changing, this was the event that catalyzed my awareness that it was time for me to move on.
And how did it change your life after you got divorced?
Oh, well, I moved away. I moved to Colorado. I wanted a clean slate. I wanted a new start. I took two of the dogs with me. I just started a whole new life in Colorado. It was a brand new chapter. I was 49 years old at that time. So that was, we're talking many, many years ago. Maybe I was even younger. It was just the beginning of the next chapter of my life. New friends, new relationships, new home, new environment. I was just ready to start over. That's what happened. I started my life over. It was a reset of my life.
So how did you during this time period, because I obviously that was very traumatic to put your dog down, and ending your marriage at the same time, how did you get through I'm sure, were you scared and feeling uncertain, like how to navigate this whole next chapter of your
Oh,
life?
yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, I was. I mean, there was just so much uncertainty. I didn't know. I was actually kind of searching where to land. I knew I wanted to land in Colorado. Something about Colorado just called me. So I felt that was where my heart and my soul felt, but I didn't know where in Colorado. So I set out on adventure to find my place in Colorado. And I visited a lot of different places in Colorado until I found the place that felt like this is my home. And that was Boulder, Colorado is where I chose. And I bought a house and, I just started my life over again. But of course it was scary. I mean, it was the first time I had really been alone, away from, my family was in my daughters were in Southern California. My whole life had been in Southern California for decades. So this was just turning a page and starting a whole new chapter. So yes, there was a great deal of uncertainty, but there was also excitement, that nervous excitement energy is the exact same energy. It's just all in how we interpret it. So, I sort of rode the waves between scared and excited at the same time.
Now, did you know anybody out in Boulder?
I knew one person. I knew one person. And I mean, it wasn't even somebody that I was that close to. But when I got there and I started looking, I kind of zeroed in on Boulder. I connected with a real estate agent that is my friend to this day. And we just really hit it off. so she introduced me to, so really through her, I met, a couple of other people, and through them, I met a couple of other people. And then the interesting part is I discovered that my former college roommate, with whom I hadn't been in touch in a long time, was living in a small town outside Boulder. So I reconnected with her, and we had been friends from high school. So, slowly I started to build a community there. Oh, my light went out. Let me turn that light back on. It didn't take that long to begin to build a new community. And I started graduate school then. And through graduate school, I met a lot of people, and just, gradually a whole new life emerged.
That's so interesting that you just shared all of that, because remember, this is like a full circle moment. Remember, I said at the beginning of the interview, I told you how you reminded me of my mom.
Yes.
And I didn't know this part of your story about going back to graduate school in your late 40s or early 50s, I'm assuming, because you moved to Colorado at 49.
Yes.
My mom went back to college in her late 40s too to get her master's degree in English. And so there's that connection. See, it's so interesting.
Yeah, your podcast is called Life is Now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Do it while you can. And it was time. I mean, all of these things had been kind of on the back burner, waiting for me to be ready. And apparently, I was involved in a marriage, and that whole life. And then when that ended, there was this huge gap that opened up in my life. And I just really wanted a clean slate. I wanted to live somewhere really where I had to start over. I loved the challenge of that.
So
Even though,
can
yeah,
continue. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just even though it was scary, uh, I'm a person who kind of likes scary things. I like to do scary things. I'm a bit of a, I don't quite know what to, I'm a bit of a daredevil that way, I guess. I like to do scary things.
Even in your 80s now, you like to do scary things?
Well, what I call scary in my 80s is very different.
Than you were in your 50s, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
it's still a form of scary. Like, you've done things in your 80s that I'm like, that would be scary for a lot of women in their 80s. Like, you're fearless. You truly are fearless. So I have a question about, you had mentioned taking things off the back burner. So what are some other things that when you got to Colorado, you're beginning this new chapter of your life, and everything is new. What are some other things that you took off the back burner that you had put there for years, and you were like, now I can do these things?
Well, this is going to sound bizarre to you who knows me in this iteration of myself. I was a bit of a different person back then. I had always been in a relationship, in a marriage, with a partner. I had always been partnered with someone. I had really never spent time in my life alone, single. And so, as a single woman now in my late 40s, just going in the world alone as a single woman, going out to eat, going to in a restaurant to eat dinner by myself. I was terrified to do that at first. And I don't think, I don't know that that's all that uncommon, for a lot of people. It was terrifying for me. Going to a movie by myself. It's not that I was terrified or scared. I felt really uncomfortable. So I went skiing by myself. I lived in Colorado. I lived in the most fabulous ski country in the world. I took myself to ski resorts and went skiing by myself. I'd ski up to the chair and yell single. And then you know how you could go to the front of the line as a single.
Yeah.
Somebody needs a partner. Yeah, and that was like
You were,
oh my God, that was just.
well, it's funny because you're saying that, and it's like it's single in more ways than one, right? And that you had to be brave and yell single.
Well, yes, exactly. Being single was a completely new experience for me. And I bought an SUV. I went camping by myself. I went I can't think of the term, off-roading in my SUV up mountains by myself. I just had so much fun, and I was on an adventure, and I was just driving around Colorado checking out, gee, I wonder what it's like in Glenwood Springs. What is it like, going in the on the train in I'm kind of in Telluride, and Steamboat Springs, and all these fabulous places in Colorado. I just would get in my car on a Friday, take off, and spend the weekend just exploring all by myself. I had never done that before. My kids were in college. So, they were in Southern California in university. So I didn't have, I was just footloose and fancy free. And I learned to love it. So yeah.
Did you make a conscious choice at that time that, you know what, I've always been in a relationship or married. I've always had someone with me. Did you make a conscious choice at that time that, no, I want to be alone and I want to be single and just see whatever it brings me in life? Because I almost feel like when you were telling the story that it's almost like you became the woman that you are. Like, I feel like that's the foundation of becoming the woman that you are today.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Very good. It is. And no, I did not. I did not make a conscious at the level of my conscious mind. I did not make a conscious decision that I wanted to stay sick. Now, I've been single ever since, by the way.
Oh,
And
interesting. I did not know that.
and that was, yeah, that was 34 years ago. So I have been single ever since then. I did not make a conscious decision that I was going to stay single for the rest of my life, but it just kind of unfolded that way. I did really enjoy the freedom of, my kids are in school. I don't have kids to be, doing stuff. I didn't have a partner, a husband, a relationship that was, that I was like connected to. I loved this experience of freedom, and I loved it so much. I keep choosing it. I keep choosing it again and again and again and again. And what I've come to realize, I didn't, and I had an astrological reading while I was in Boulder. It was Indian astrology, Western Indian astrology, not American Indigenous Indian,
Right.
and he told me something that was shocking to me at the time. But he said, you didn't come in this lifetime to do marriage or personal relationship. You came to do transpersonal relationship. And that was such a foreign concept to me at the time. I just couldn't get my mind wrapped around it. But it turns out, based on results and the fact that 34 years later, 33 years later, I'm happily single. I can't imagine myself ever being in a committed relationship again. And it doesn't mean that, I adore men. I have male friends. I'm not anti-male. I have, I think men are great, all of that. I am not male bashing or any of that. I just know that for me, my soul and my heart are happiest right how I am, right where I am, with the freedom that I enjoy today.
I have a question about that. So this is interesting. So I did not know you've been single since that happened,
Yeah.
because I met you about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, do you think if you got into a relationship, a long-term relationship, or got married at some point between then and where you are now, do you think you could have done all the things that you've done in your life? um, if you had somebody with you?
Hard to say. Hard to say. Hard to know. I guess, it depends on who he would be.
Hmm.
Uh, because I mean, I always have been attracted to men. If I were going to be in a relationship, would be with a male.
Right.
Not that I have anything against people who choose women who choose women. Not at all. It's just not my thing. Um, I think if I were to be in any kind of a long term, it would be more as dear friends, dear committed, loving, adoring friends. Um, Not marriage.
Yeah.
I would never be in another marriage. Not at my
Yeah.
age. I'm 82. Come on. Who
Yeah.
needs to be married I don't need to be married. Um, and I have male friends that I love and adore. So the question was, would I have enjoyed the kind of freedom that I have? My guess is probably not, but it depends on who he would be and
Yes, exactly.
what mattered to him, and if we were a match in that. And if we weren't a match in that regard, we wouldn't be together. So I guess the answer is probably not, likely
Right.
not.
Yeah, I like if I saw you with anybody, it would number one have to be with somebody that's very secure with himself, but also is okay with you spending time doing what you love and not including him in everything and anything. So, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but
Well, that
some,
actually one of the wrinkles in the marriage was that he wasn't okay with me having my own separate life,
yeah.
doing what I needed to do. And that just, it was a formula for not working.
Yeah, I'm sure, that was hard to see the marriage end, but you didn't know what was on the other side, right?
Very
As they
true.
say, when one door closes, another one opens. And I see millions of doors that open for you because you've really created an amazing life. So, Judith, what would you say are three quick things that you really learned about this experience? Because I am sure it wasn't easy at the time when you were going through it, but what would you say are some things that you really learned about this experience?
Well, one thing is I discovered the capacity, which I then relearned again when my parents died. But my parents were still alive at this point in the story. So I had never had the experience before of feeling deep sadness, profound sadness and loss and grief and joy and gratitude at the same time. So I really feel that I deepened my capacity to hold of a wider range of emotions. It was a very emotional time for me. I was deeply grieving both the loss of my marriage and the loss of my dog. And at the same time, grateful, um, just feeling released and free. All those things were happening at the same time. So I think I really expanded my capacity and depth. Um, I think I was very humbled by that experience. It was probably maybe the first time in my life that I felt humbled by something because I wanted the marriage to work. I really was committed to working it out, and it wasn't mutual. And so it was, okay, this is not mutual, so I get to let go. And so the letting go, the another lesson was the letting go of the leash, the letting go and trusting and surrendering that you're going to be fine. You don't know what's ahead. Trust the process. Just trust your heart, trust your soul, trust yourself, follow your heart. And then, I guess another lesson would be, I think I just named a whole bunch of them all in that one. They're all kind of, they're all kind of in the same bucket, trust, surrender, let go. That, I could call those three different lessons, and they're all in the same bucket. So, yeah, I've never been so happy in my life as I am today. I'll tell you that.
Oh, I know. I know. You're so amazing. And Judith, I can't thank you enough for sharing this vulnerable story, because I know you said you've never shared this publicly, and you had me in tears. I was like, "Oh gosh, Judith didn't even know I'm such an animal lover, and look, that's my dog that I used to have." And when he passed away, I was in tears too. So all these emotions were coming up for me too, but I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing that story, and how it changed the trajectory of your life, and how you
Yeah.
created the life that you have today. Because you truly do live in the life is now concept. So, Judith, how can the audience find you?
Well, they can come to my website, judithrich.com. They can email me at judithrich.com. I'm on Facebook. They can find me on Facebook. Dr. Judith Rich, I think, is my Facebook handle. Yeah, mainly those places.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Judith.